So our vision is healthy food, thriving community.
Good morning. Welcome to the 13th live virtual Transform Westside Summit. For those of you that are joining us again, thank you for coming back. And for those of you that are first-time viewers, thank you for joining. My name is John Amman. I'm the leader of the Westside Future Fund, and we're honored to host and sponsor this broadcast. And this morning, still coming to you live from TaylorMade Studios. TaylorMade is one of the folks that work with us to bring this great broadcast, and we're out of their studios this morning. You can see the great LED screens behind me, and they've really invested. It's actually his father's church, and during COVID, his father's not using the church, so they've repurposed the church to serve as a studio, and they're doing lots of great work here. So thank you to Taylor and his team for hosting us here again today. And for this 13th virtual summit, we've got it all around urban farming and urban agriculture. You know, one of the things that we've learned, and you can see in the LED screen behind me, that's actually a garden on the west side. We'll talk more about it during the show. But one of the things that COVID has really put a point on is the importance of having healthy and locally sourced food. And one of the great things going on the west side is lots of local growers, local farms, community gardens, and we're going to talk a lot more about that in our broadcast with some great guests. You know, and in a big part, when we did the land use framework plan, that had a lot of support from the community. A big part, one of the key themes was really lifting up and supporting, urban agriculture and urban farming. And we're also going to be bringing to you and cut to a moment live from what used to be owned by Atlantic Community Food Bank, now in a partnership with the Food Well Alliance owned by the Westside Future Fund, how we're going to be repurposing that building all around food and processing food and supporting local growers on the west side. Unfortunately, as we all know, we are still in a global pandemic, COVID-19. Unfortunately, and our sympathies are out there for those that are experiencing loss. It continues to have overwhelming consequences, especially in the 30314 zip code, the zip codes that we serve with the Westside Future Fund. And we have a slide up that shows you, and we put this up every broadcast, about how cases are tracking, the unemployment rate, and also as a reminder, COVID has led to joblessness, and in the Westside communities, a lot of whom worked in the hospitality industry that's been particularly hard hit. So we think the unemployment rate in the Westside community is over 30%. Unfortunately, the Congress has not passed a new stimulus package, especially extending unemployment compensation for many who want to work, but unfortunately there's not work. And that joblessness has led to a lot of despair, and we see spiking up in historic Westside communities, unfortunately violence. I was actually talking to some folks that run the Yancey Clinic, and they've noticed that there's an uptick in people coming into trauma, unfortunately domestic violence, and so we call it the COVID triple threat that has led to these consequences. So as a reminder, about who's bringing you the broadcast, especially those that are new, the Westside Future Fund is a not-for-profit. We got a great vision, a vision that to help build a community that Dr. King would be proud to call home. And we really pivot off that, reflecting that Dr. King's last home was in Vine City. And, I now live in Vine City and take a lot of inspiration from Dr. King and so many Westside heroes that live there now and historically. And as a not-for-profit, we've got a great board of directors, and you can see our full board of directors kind of reflecting the community and the greater city of Atlanta. And we're led by Dr. Beverly Tatum, the former president of Spelman College, and also has a book right now that's at the top of the New York Times bestseller list, Why All the Black Kids Eat Together in the cafeterias. So thank you, Westside Future Fund Board of Directors. And also I got a great team. You hear me talking a lot, but helping get all the work done. We'll hear from some of that team later this morning. Is a great team of the Westside Future Fund. So thank you, Westside Future Fund team. And we also, speaking of teams, want to stay connected. One of the things I really miss is being at the gathering spot, around a bunch of folks, getting to know each other, working together, but we still want to get connected via social media. There are our handles, so we'd encourage you to pop into our social medias. And we've gotten a lot of help, speaking of getting connected, from a former WSB News broadcaster. Y'all, if you're watching our show, know him, Craig Lucy. Craig is walking on now. Thank you for being...
Happy Friday.
Is this awesome or what? I'm always a little nervous before the show starts, man, I have to say.
I think you're doing a fantastic job.
But you're always so polished. I always feel like you are so, but you have any broadcasts you've done anything in your career?
That's hard to say. I've been doing it since 2004 when I graduated college.
This is my 13th, so.
He's doing a great job, isn't he? You know what? This crew here at TMPAV Studios, awesome. James Hammond with Icon Filmworks, making this all possible. And as you said, we want people to get connected, get engaged, really invest their time into the Westside. And we do have our social media handles for folks watching on Facebook. It's at Westside Future Fund, Twitter, WFF Atlanta. And speaking of, last time we were here, what's cool about the TMPAV Studios, it's very versatile. So you see this LED board, it was split in three. Now we just join them all together.
And that's live right now.
And look. So we have a live picture right here, and one of our loyal viewers, Sherry Bellil.
Yeah, Sherry, thank you.
And Valerie Williams is on there on the spot.
And Valerie, too. All right, good morning, Valerie.
Good morning, Open Hand Atlanta. Good morning from Open Hand Atlanta. Abkar Imhotep is Salam Alaikum, and then we have Ashani Collins.
So that's like live right now.
Good morning.
That's
this
not
is
from
live.
Yesterday.
So actually, we want to put an ask out there for people who are joining us on Facebook. Share this, so we can get more folks who are not aware about what the Westside Future Fund is doing, so we can get more people connected. Now, we're live here in the studio. We want to bring in a remote live cam, which we did a couple summits ago.
Yeah, we've been enhancing our,
We're evolving.
Our getting connected. Because, what I know is hard during COVID is not being around people, right?
Yeah.
And one way we keep each other going is by lifting up our stories, talking about what's going on. So we've been really intentional, especially in our collective effort, lifting up all our impact partners, and we're about to go to one right now, right?
We are. Let's bring in Mr. Benjamin Early at 970 Jefferson. There he is, always looking cool,
live.
isn't he?
This is live.
Good morning, Benjamin. What's going on out there?
All right.
It's a wonderful, wonderful morning here at 970 Jefferson Street. Among many things, this is the home of our Thursday food delivery service. And if you just look here at the table, we have a few items that we typically have. We have canned food, good, easy baked food. We got white rice. We've got brown rice. We've got lentils. We've got black beans. We also are very grateful for the fresh produce that we typically get from Atlanta Community Food Bank, as well as some of our urban farmers who you'll hear from today. What we ask our volunteers to do is they'll do a quality check on all of the food, make sure it's up to par, sort it out for our delivery drivers, and then we'll have our drivers back right in, load up, and take it right out to our single-family and multi-family units.
So we're always looking for people to volunteer, right, Benjamin? So if folks want to volunteer, they can sign up on our website. We practice social distancing.
Yeah,
so everything stays safe, but people stay in their car, we load it up.
We're asking that, anybody who has some time on a Thursday morning from starting at 9 a.m. through the afternoon, you could come and do as much as you have time to do, but come and show some love for the Westside. It's a great opportunity to give back, and you'll feel great after doing so, I guarantee you.
And one of the things we do with the Westside Future Fund, there's a lot of folks out there, we'll talk to them this morning out there, delivering food, but we really focused on folks that we serve on our multifamily properties through our Home on the Westside, our folks, seniors that often in our anti-displacement tax program, and some of the families that we're supporting at Hollis. So we have kind of a focused food delivery, and we're grateful to the Atlanta Community Food Bank and others that continue to bring us that food. And so, it's a good time, a great way to give back. So thank you for coming to us live. Benjamin, we're going to come back to you later in the broadcast. So thank you for being with us this morning. Anything you want to say before we cut away to our next segment?
It's a good day to be Friday.
It is a good day. All right, man. Thank you. All right.
Yes, sir.
And so, for the next part of our, our broadcast, as we always do, broadcast, we've been talking about a great documentary that we've been promoting, and some of the proceeds, if you go by and rent the documentary, via our link. But to introduce this documentary, we're going to show a short advertising clip we recently put together. So we're going to show that to you now. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it. It's about a 30-second clip that we're using to really promote, this documentary by John Lewis, Good Trouble.
See something that is not right, not fair, not just, say something, do something.
Congressman Lewis gave us the blueprint to organize.
Common sense gun control legislation to the House floor.
So thanks to one of our charitable supporters, Katie Barksdale, who's also one of the show's producers, the documentary, actually saw the pre-screening of that when it was screened, and it's an amazing documentary. And I had an opportunity to meet the show producers, and more information about them is in our bulletin. But the show producers, if you have agreed that if you go purchase watching the documentary through our website, proceeds go to Home on the Westside. But on October 22nd, if you purchase the proceeds, you'll be invited to a live session where you can interact via the social media channels with these social media producers who've done lots of social justice films. So it's a great opportunity to learn from them and talk to them if you go purchase tickets through our website. So please do that. And so for the next part of our broadcast, we want to remind you we have a special giveaway thanks to the Home Depot Foundation. Thank you, Home Depot Foundation. So if you pre-registered for our summit on our website, and you still have about a half hour to do it, if you go pre-register on our website, we'll have a random name given. I'll read it at the end of the broadcast, but whoever name I read that's randomly done will receive a compliments of the Home Depot Foundation, a gift card to go shop at Home Depot. So that'll be toward the end of our broadcast. And for the next part of our broadcast, as we always did, and we always did this when we were at the gathering spot, we're going to go to our devotion. But before I do that, I do want to remind you, if you haven't downloaded it, we got a great PDF on our website. It's the bulletin, and we update this for each of our Transform Live summits. And so please grab this. You can look at it on your screen, but it has the full bios of our speakers. It talks about our program, and also has a lot of great information out there in the community about voting, the census, and also numbers to call if you have any kind of COVID-19 related health system. So please grab our bulletin. And I'm going to say more about it in a second, but we're lucky this morning to have our devotion brought to us by the president of the Chick-fil-A Foundation, Rodney Bullard, and he always does a great job. He's done a few before. But as a reminder, for those that aren't familiar, we always start our broadcast with the devotion. We ask folks to kind of draw inspiration from Nehemiah. And Nehemiah is in the Old Testament, and it's the story of Nehemiah who goes back to Jerusalem. He was the cupbearer to the king, and really about rebuilding Jerusalem by first building a wall to make it safe for the residents. But the part of the story I really take a lot of inspiration from is how they come around a common set of values to help one another and rebuild their community. And so we ask our speakers just to kind of draw inspiration from that. And we always like to have different devotion speakers, both professional and folks that are just kind of volunteering to do it. And before we bring up Rodney, did a pre-recorded devotion, I'm going to read a statement that I always do to kind of level set before we do the devotion. It's become our tradition to begin our meetings with a positive, inspirational message from a member of our community. Recognizing that many in our community are driven by their spiritual faith to participate in the Westside revitalization effort, the time at the beginning of our meeting is an opportunity to share various inspirational reflections. While the speakers may articulate their personal faith, it's meant to be inclusive, inspiring, and meaningful with the story of Nehemiah as our guide. And as I said, Rodney pre-recorded this for us on Wednesday night, so thank you, Rodney, for taking time out to do that if you're watching. And he's Vice President of Social Responsibility for the Chick-fil-A Foundation. And the Chick-fil-A Foundation has been a big supporter of the Westside Future Fund, the collective effort. Lots of the not-for-profits that are out here, helping build a new Westside future have supported the Chick-fil-A Foundation. So thank you. And we come out of that live broadcast, we're going to have some of our guests who work in food growing. So We look forward to that. But now we'll cut to our live broadcast. Pre-recorded devotion from Rodney Bullard, and come back to our live broadcast. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rodney Bullard, and I come to you with greetings from the Chick-fil-A Foundation and Chick-fil-A. It is an honor to be able to give the devotion again at the Westside Summit. We have been a part of this effort for a very long time, since the beginning, and it's a great opportunity to see how John Almond is leading the organization and how the staff of the Westside Future Fund continue to uplift the Westside, and how this devotion in particular continues to enrich people. So I'm honored to be here, and I'd like to talk to you all about bullies in the neighborhood. You know, I grew up here in Decatur, Georgia, near South DeKalb Mall, and we had bullies in our neighborhood. I think everybody grew up with bullies at some point. I remember when I was 6 years old, there was a kid around the corner, and even though I was bigger than he was, at 6, he was about 9 years old, and I looked up to him, and even more so, I was afraid of him. And he would beat me up, and he would send me back around the corner to my mother. And my mother would send me back around the corner to him. And she kept sending me around that corner until I finally hit him, and I realized that I was bigger than the bully. And so it gave me this sense of confidence. It gave me this sense of that I wasn't as small and I wasn't as inferior as I thought I was. But we've all encountered bullies in our lives. There have been bullies throughout history. I'm a big fan of Civil War history. I'm a student of Civil War history. When I was a kid, I would go to the cyclorama, and it really sparked this interest in such a critical period in this country's existence. And one story particularly sticks with me. It's the story of Senator Charles Sumner from Massachusetts, and the story of Representative Preston Brooks from South Carolina. In 1856, before the Civil War, Senator Charles Sumner was an ardent abolitionist. He had long been against slavery, and he had long spoken out against the evils of enslavement. And on one day, May 19th and May 20th, he gave a speech. It was a fiery speech. And he really talked about the evils of slavery, and he talked specifically about the evils of slavery and the expansion into the Midwest. And this speech inflamed many in the Senate and many in the Congress. And so a few days later, Senator Sumner was sitting alone in the Senate floor. And from behind, Representative Brooks from South Carolina comes up, and he begins to accost him. He begins to berate him about the speech that he's given, and said it was insulting to the South. It was insulting specifically to his cousin. And at some point, he pulls out his cane and he begins to whip him furiously across the head. He beat him so badly that Senator Sumner could not walk. Beat him so badly that Senator Sumner could not walk. They literally had to carry him off to the doctor. And in fact, Massachusetts continued to elect him to the Senate for another term, even though physically he couldn't serve. And for 3 years, his seat sat empty because he wasn't physically able to serve. Now, this beating caused a stir at the time. Some people lined up on the right and some people lined up on the left. Preston Brooks was celebrated, so much so that Brooks County here in Georgia is named after Preston Brooks because of the caning. And so much so on the other side that this began to be a march towards civil war. And so the bully, Preston Brooks, of this story continues on. He continues on in his seat for another year until there is some sense of justice here. It's morbid and it's sad unto itself, but he died about a year later at the age of 37 from whooping cough. But Senator Sumner eventually regains his seat, eventually actually sits in his seat again. And Senator Sumner then served from 1859 to his death in 1874, well after the Civil War. And in fact, Lincoln said that he was his bishop, and he was the whisperer, or one of the whisperers in Lincoln's ear to push for the Emancipation Proclamation. You see, bullies have a place in history, and bullies have always been in history. I want to take you to Nehemiah, to a biblical place, because there are bullies even in the Bible. Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 1. It reads as, when Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became angry and was greatly incensed. He ridiculed the Jews, and in the presence of his associates and the army of Samaria, he said, what are those feeble Jews doing? Will they restore their wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they finish in a day? Can they bring the stones back to life from these heaps of rubble, burned as they are? Tobiah the Ammonite, who was at his side, said, what are they building? Even a fox climbing up on it will break down their walls of stone. Hear us, O God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back on their heads. Give them over as plunder in a land of captivity. Do not cover up their guilt or blot out their sins from your sight, for they have sinned, for they have thrown insults in the face of the builders. So we rebuilt the wall till all of it reached half its height, for the people worked with all of their heart. But when Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arab Geshem, the Ammonites, and the people of Ashdod heard that the repairs to Jerusalem's walls had gone ahead and that the gaps were being closed, they were very angry. They all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and stir up trouble against it. But we prayed to our God and posted a guard day and night to meet this threat. As I think about bullies and as I think about this text, I think about three things. One, I'm mindful that they prayed, and I'm mindful that they called to God to fight the bully. Not in their own selves, but they called to God to fight the bully. And then they realized three things. They realized, one, that God is bigger than any bully. You see, Nehemiah had gone back to rebuild the broken wall of Jerusalem, the wall that had been torn down as Jerusalem had been sacked years ago. Nehemiah was the cupbearer to the king. Now I want you to think about a cupbearer. Cupbearer is someone who literally tastes the wine or the food prior to the king. And if it is poison, then Nehemiah would die and not the king. It's an important role, but it's not the highest role. In fact, it is a role that is close to the king, but is fraught with danger. And now Nehemiah, the cupbearer to the king, has gone back to his ancestral home to rebuild the walls. He has brought back the remnant to rebuild the walls. And he has encountered three bullies. He's encountered Sanballat, who, as the scripture reads, is in charge of the Sumerian garrison. He has an army at his disposal. He encounters Tobiah. Tobiah, as you continue to read into Nehemiah, comes from an aristocratic family. He has money at his disposal. And then he encounters Geshem the Arab. And even though these three may not have a lot in common on his face, they all were bullying Nehemiah. They all looked at Nehemiah and said, no, you can't do this. But Nehemiah understood that his God was bigger than the Sumerian army. His God was bigger than any riches that Tobiah may have. His God was bigger than Geshem and the cities under his control. He understood that like David understood. We all know the story of David. David was a shepherd boy, a mere shepherd boy. And Goliath was a giant, a killer. But God was bigger than Goliath. We all know the story of the Israelites fleeing Egypt with Pharaoh and his chariots on their heels. They couldn't overtake Pharaoh by themselves, but God was bigger than Pharaoh. So one, I want you to remember that God is bigger than your bullies. Two, I want you to remember that God's purpose is better than your bullies. That God's purpose is better. I'm struck by what Nehemiah said, and he says it twice. He says it in chapter 4, and later he says it in chapter 6. He said, we have to go back to building the wall. We have to focus on building the wall. They posted guards, but God's purpose wasn't going to be interrupted by the bullies. I want you to think about your purpose. I want you to think about times in which people may have said, you can't do that. That's not possible. Nobody's ever done that before. Why would you do that? I want you to think about naysayers in your life, whether they are family, friends, foes, well-intentioned or not. We have to be careful as to how we guard that purpose which God has given us. We have to be careful not to let someone bully us out of the purpose that we know is better than the bully. And last, I want to tell you that your blessing is in the bully. That God's blessing is in the bully. Oftentimes that's hard to see. We're in the midst of it. And I'm sure Nehemiah did not think that Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem were a blessing to him at the time. But they caused him to work harder. They caused him to focus. They kept him on task. And in 52 days, they rebuilt the wall because they knew they needed to do it quicker. They had to hasten their step. But even more so, building the wall, following God's purpose, was the blessing that the bullies enabled. We might not know about David if there were no Goliath. We wouldn't have the glory of the Israelites and the parting of the Red Sea if there were no Pharaoh. So I tell you that yes, your bullies will come. And yes, your bullies will tell you you can't do it.
And making my own confession, I know I've had times in my life that I've showed up like a bully to others, maybe unintentionally, maybe because I'm upset, maybe. So how can I be a better me? How can I, bring out that hero in me? And that's the great part about Rodney's book, is he really walks through, that so we can show up as our better selves. And one of the things we have as part of our work on the Westside, which I really appreciate about the devotion and all of us working together, is we have as our mission, how do you advance a compassionate approach to neighborhood revitalization? Because sometimes I think the bully can be indifference, because it's hard. I live in Vine City where COVID's hitting so hard, the low-wage African-American community on the West Side, and the bully feels like indifference often. And so, through practicing compassion, through helping one another, we can turn that around. And I know a lot of people are doing just that. So, thank you, Rodney, for that devotion. And one of the things we always do, when we're doing this at the gathering spot, and if you're a first-time viewer, we were doing this at the gathering spot. We'd usually have a couple hundred people. And one of the things we really want to know is for people to get to know each other, back to kind of Rodney's point about how we can all work together. But to work together, better to know each other. So we'd always do self-introductions. And so we want to do that today. We've been doing it through our live broadcast. If you're watching, we want you to self-introduce on social media. So I'm going to go back to Craig Lucy, who's going to help us with the social. You're back, man. Thank you.
That was a fantastic devotion, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was great.
Yep. And so a lot of people are already commenting on Facebook right now and checking in. And it is one of the best moments that we have over at the gathering spot, where you make sure that everybody who's present in that room, they self-introduce, they say a little bit about themselves. And since we're doing this virtually, we want you right now, if you're watching us on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook, just type in your name in the comments section.
So we'd love to see the names right now.
Yes.
So if you're watching live right now, type your name in, please.
Here we go.
We want to know you're out there.
So what we have right here, Mo Hemi says, good morning. Christina Britt, amen, Rodney.
Amen. All right, he's got some fans.
We love that. Sherry Belil, yes, so true. Yep.
You better preach this day, Rodney. Valerie is head of the Alumni Association at Booker T. Washington High School. Thank you, Valerie.
Absolutely. And I have pulled up on YouTube as well, John, that we have Elizabeth Wilkes says, morning, Helen Price. Good morning,
Helen
Westside.
Price from the Coca-Cola. Thank you for watching, Helen, one of our big supporters of the Coca-Cola Foundation.
We have Peggy Gibson, Joan Vernon, who is just
our Director of Neighborhood Engagement. Glad she's
so
watching.
Much for the Westside
thank
Future
you, Chode.
Fund. Kate Connor says, good morning, Westside Future Fund friends and family.
Oh, Kate Connor, she's with the Foodwell Alliance. We're going to hear more about the Foodwell Alliance in just a moment.
Well, yeah, we're going to be showing a video here shortly, really about how they've been responding during this COVID-19 pandemic. And we have Brenda Dalton, who says, morning, everyone to the West Side. Good morning, everybody. Back at you. Renee White, good morning. And Renee adds that she likes this. She's learning a lot.
Great.
Yeah.
We like comments that are positive.
Yep. So we appreciate you typing in your name. In a little bit, though, in a second, we're going to be introducing our panel. If you have any questions for our panel, make sure that you jump in the comment section and ask those questions, and we'll be taking those questions live, too.
Right.
So
we're about to bring up our panel, right?
Yep.
And so for those that are watching, what we're going to do now is we're going to bring up some chairs for our panel, right?
Yep. We're going to do this slide real quick and show our incredible panelist, incredible panel this morning. So go for it.
So we have three panelists, all of whom gotten to know through the work on the West Side. But we have Carol Hunter, and Carol is the executive director of a great urban farm now on the West Side, actually over in the Asheview Heights neighborhood near Emmanuel Jones Elementary School. I'm looking at the wrong camera. So Carol, Truly Living Well, we're going to hear more about that, about a 3-acre or so urban farm, doing a great job. And so we'll hear from Carol, full bios in our bulletin. We'll also hear from Baiyewu, who works with the Foodwell Alliance. It's a not-for-profit that's all about supporting farmers like Carol and other local growers, not only in the West Side, but through Metro Atlanta. So we'll learn more about the Foodwell Alliance. And then also we'll be hearing from Bill Bolling. Now, Bill has long been about food in Atlanta, and for those that have been around Atlanta for a bit know that Bill was actually the founder many, many years ago of the Atlanta Community Food Bank, and now has retired from that, but he still gives his considerable time to being the volunteer chair of the Foodwell Alliance. So thank you. And we're in partnership with the Foodwell Alliance on our building at 970 Jefferson Street, which we're going to talk more about in a second. And so now I'm actually going to, I'm being coached by Craig Lucy that I thought I was going to sit down, but I got all my stuff in my chair. But our first question, what we're going to do this morning, is going to go to Carol. So what we're going to do this morning is we're going to visit with them for about a half hour or so. You'll have an opportunity toward the end to kind of ask any questions via social media. But my first question is going to go to Carol. But to help you learn a bit more about Truly Living Well, we're going to play a short video, and then I'm going to take my first question to Carol. Then we'll go to the rest of the panelists.
Truly Living Well is in a community that doesn't have easy access to fresh, healthy food. By putting a community garden here, we were able to take unusable land and make an urban oasis. We've got over 84 raised beds here and over 100 trees. The food that comes out of here, more than 25,000 pounds of food, goes directly to support the community. Westside Future Fund is one of our greatest partners. They bring volunteers and corporate groups who actually invest in this work that we're doing. We work together to bring about better health and wellness, and also working with our youth around education, using urban agriculture as a platform. Beautification on a farm like this is so important so that we can help invite our community in to take part in the work that we do. So having a group of volunteers from AT&T come to do mulching, weeding, painting, maintenance tasks, helping with our compost, phenomenal and deeply appreciated.
All right. Thank you. Great video, Carol. And, thank you so much for being here. I know you had to get up early to come here. And Truly Living Well does such a great job on the West Side. And I know you've been with it for quite some time, and I took over from its founding president, so Rashid Nuri. And I guess what I'd ask you to reflect on, especially during COVID, why you think you know, especially at this time, truly living well is, you know, so important, having urban farms and local growing. I mean, just maybe reflect a little bit about, you know, what you think is really important about the mission and service of Truly Living Well right now.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me here this morning. This is just such a blessing to hear from Rodney and to be a part of this group. COVID really heightened the reason why we're in the community. We had a number of people from our community who literally just walked up and saying, I'm hungry. We had people who hadn't paid attention to the farm before come and want to find out what we do. How can I learn to grow my own food? Because there was fear because of what was happening with COVID, and then also because people weren't sure where their next meal was coming from. And so by us being there, we were able to provide food to those folks who need it, but also begin to engage people in the work that we do, which is encouraging them to grow their own food, learning about the health benefits of that healthy food, and also being in this space that really brings about reducing of stress, peace, harmony. There's nothing like being in a garden to just kind of give you a woo-saw moment. So all of that was important during COVID. The other thing that struck me about COVID was, even for our organization, we were affected as well. And in that time in March, we were just beginning to do our planting for the fall. And I drove up on the farm one day. We had to cut some of our staff, actually. But I drove up on the farm one day, and there were people spread out across the farm working to help us get food in the ground. And so that really spoke to me about how important community is. And not only are we there to give, but people also have an opportunity to give back to us. And so we were able to capture more space, more land, to grow more food that we were able to give back to the community. And that kind of give and take, working hand in hand, building together was so important to the work that we do, but also it's a reflection of the community in which we're working and we're living.
And I know too, you know, you're a not-for-profit, so folks want to support you, you would welcome that. But I know what I heard you say is, you know, folks from the community, because you're right in the community, have come up, you know, a heightened interest in food, but you also support, you know, volunteers. I know if people want to come volunteer to help grow the food. And then you also do a great job with Ed Magnus Jones in terms of, you know, I know right now the kids aren't in school, but really connecting with the school across the street, you know, to really, you know, lift up food.
And that's such an important part of our work, being there, working, being available as a learning lab for the students from M. Agnes, but also other children in the community.
And I know when I first started working with Westside Future Fund, Rashid Neri was still running Truly Living Well, and hearing a lot about his heart for why it started. You know, what I learned from him, what I remember is his concern that people kind of have become disconnected, you know, from where food came from, how food was grown, and it almost has a kind of a spiritual basis, right? And part of what Truly Living Well is about is really, because I learned from him, what was more important to him than the actual farming was the teaching and the learning. Because a big part of you have some great education programs. And
we continue with that mission as a part of our work with monthly education classes around urban ag and growing food, and also other specialty classes. Each one of our farmers is also an educator. So even people who come and volunteer and work alongside of them get an opportunity to learn about the land.
Well, thank you. We're going to come back to some more, but we want to turn now to Baiyewu, and thank you with the Foodwell Alliance. And to help introduce the Foodwell Alliance, many may not know about the Foodwell Alliance, we're going to show, you know, a short video about the Foodwell Alliance.
This is about mobilizing resources to keep growers growing. This is about empowering people to grow their own fresh, healthy food. This is about more fresh, locally grown food and getting it to more people. This is Foodwell Alliance, responding in the midst of one of the greatest crises we've ever faced. There is no safer, healthier food than locally grown food. It will help our community survive the pandemic and thrive in its aftermath. The demand for this nutritious food is rapidly growing, and from day one, Foodwell Alliance has been focused on one thing: equipping our local growers to meet this demand. Since April 1st, we've deployed more than 1,000 hours of labor and mechanical support to farms and gardens. delivered hundreds of cubic yards of compost, distributed bucket gardens and raised bed kits to 150 families, provided compost, labor, and more than 1,700 seedlings for over 60 community gardens. And in partnership with Captain Planet, we're bringing nearly 7,000 square feet of space back to life at over 60 school gardens. This is just the beginning of the work at hand. The role of urban agriculture has been brought into new light. We can improve lives as more people come to know that the source of our resilience is in the soil. Let's keep growers growing.
All right, great video. And I know you've really got a heart for the mission of the Foodwell Alliance, especially supporting local growers on the West Side. And for those viewers that don't know much about the Foodwell Alliance, I mean, what would you really want them to know about the Foodwell Alliance?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for having us this morning. It's great to be here with wonderful colleagues to my left and my right, everyone behind the scenes. Foodwell Alliance is an organization that has existed since 2015. That's when we were founded. And our mission is to join those leading the local food movement in the work of building thriving community gardens and farms. We believe that food is a tool for building communities. And we do that work in 5 counties, Clayton, Cobb, DeKalb, Fulton, and Gwinnett. That work that we do at Foodwell Alliance, we tend to deploy resources through grants, tool lending programs, compost, volunteer and labor support, as well as technical assistance. And we overall believe that this work can impact communities in healthy ways, community engagement, outreach, job creation, and environmental outcomes as well.
And talk about, because when we did the Westside Land Use Framework Plan, one thing that the folks leading the planning heard was how much support there was for urban agriculture in the West Side. And maybe share with your own reflections. I mean, do we have a lot of local growers out there on the West Side? Is the West Side seen to be kind of more deeper into this than other places, or any reflections there?
Yeah, absolutely. Atlanta has, the metro Atlanta area has a rich history in food and urban agriculture. Definitely the history of the South is built on food in a variety of ways. In the West Side, when we think about Northwest Atlanta as well as Southwest Atlanta, at Foodwell Alliance, we've worked with over 40 unique organizations and deployed over $1 million worth of resources since 2015. That's a combination of approximately 10 urban farms, over 20 community gardens, over 10 local food organizations, community food organizations, organizations like Good Samaritan. You also have caterers, Marty's Kitchen. You have food distribution and community engagement like Everybody Eats that we're looking forward to working with in the future, Distribute Collective. So the West Side is definitely a thriving area overall. And when it comes to local food, food access, urban agriculture, that's definitely the same.
And one thing maybe, if I go to Bill, one more question is big thing, is the attention is appropriately turned to social justice, especially for the Black community in Atlanta on the West Side. That's especially true. And one of the things that I hear a lot is the theme that freedom equals ownership, right? Owning your destiny, owning your home, owning your business, but around this theme of agency based in ownership. And have you seen that when people, how it reinstores pride? Because there's certainly the healthy aspect of growing food, but what's your reflection on how it just helps, build pride and ownership in a community?
Yeah, it's true. I came into this work in 2013, actually training at Truly Living Well. I'm learning how to grow food and putting my hands in the soil. And I was trained by people who had done years and years and decades of doing that work. When we think about food and urban agriculture, there's the food access component. Communities are also looking towards, working towards food justice, food sovereignty, the ability to feed yourself, to feed your community, to feed your family, to be able to share those resources. I always like to use the analogy, if I'm growing tomatoes and Carol is growing basil and Bill Bolling is growing lettuce, we put that together and we have a wonderful salad. So yeah, there is no culture without agriculture, and being able to control your food is a way of sovereignty and controlling your community and being able to lead your future and your path. So absolutely. And we have a lot of people in the urban ag movement and local food movement who are entrepreneurs, those who have worked with nonprofit organizations, philanthropic organizations. But I will say that the heartbeat of it is local food leaders who are entrepreneurs really doing this work day in and day out.
Yeah, no, I think you bring a lot of passion to that. And we're going to turn, Bill, to the founder of the Food Well Alliance. But to help viewers who may know not a lot about you, we found this, I guess it was about a 10-year-old video we're going to show to introduce Bill Bolling.
Might have been before I went gray.
Right, before you went gray, when you're more handsome. No, just teasing.
Well, as I look back on it, it makes some sense. I don't think I left home as a young man thinking I'm going to work in food. I grew up most of my life in a small town of about 1,000 people. We grew our own food, had our own animals. My father died when I was young, and we moved back to my mother's home. So my grandfather was my father figure for some years. And as I look back on his influences, he was the manager of this little town. He was the police chief and the dog catcher and the fireman, and he took care of people. And my mother was a caretaker. She was a nurse. And I had those kind of influences. And when I think back with my grandfather, I worked in the fields. We canned and froze product. My grandfather always leased extra land, more than we had a farm. He would go lease land, grow more food, and he'd give it away. He would go around to the parts of town where there were poor folks, and with food and supplies or blankets or whatever, would go from house to house. So I think those were very strong influences on me. And food was something that I think was common and is common to all of us. Later in life, food became also an opportunity as I was running a community kitchen, and then found that there was a lot of food and a lot of hunger, so it was just a matter of putting those together.
All right, when I watched that video, I realized you come by your heart of service, with obviously a very special grandfather. And, for viewers watching, Bill has been a great a colleague to me personally, kind of real mentor, as well as leading the work on the Westside. But Bill, I love, one of the things I love is the way you tell the story around why the Food Well Alliance was founded. Because it's one thing, it's about food, but I know it's about something else too, which is also was your heart in founding the Atlanta Community Food Bank. And I think you know what I'm probing for.
Well, John, the idea of using food as a transformational tool goes all the way back to St. Luke's Church.
Right.
Helped start the first community kitchen in Atlanta, and then realize that if you serve people with dignity and you serve great food and you're willing to sit down and listen to each other's stories, that's how change happens. So the idea of going from a community kitchen to a food bank made natural sense to me, and it's grown through the years. As I was leaving after 36 years of working at the food bank, as I was leaving, I didn't know what I would do next. I wasn't thinking about starting something new, but started a dialogue with the Cox Foundation and Jim Kennedy. And the idea there, just like the food bank, was how do we use food as that transformational tool? We'd been doing community gardening for over 25 years at the food bank. So Food Well really was kind of the next iteration of that work. And as we have been working on the Westside since 1984 is when we first arrived. So this community has supported us through the years, and then we've supported congregations and nonprofit groups as we continue today on that Thursday distribution. But the idea of getting back to the soil and back to gardening and farming, back to farmers markets. One of the things we've found on the Westside is we don't have enough stores. In fact, we only have one grocery store. So as we talk to the community, that's the thing they told us. We need food security. We need access to healthy food. And if we can involve people in growing their own food, and that really is the key, and for children to understand where food comes from and how important the soil is. But Food Well is here as a servant leader to support programs like Truly Living Well and the ones that Baiyewu talked about. We have hundreds of community gardens. We have farms on the west side. And I think out of that interaction, and you can see it every day over at Truly Living Well, that we engage children and families, We learn from the experience, and I think very much we're empowering the community to take control of its own destiny. So it's an exciting time for us.
So what I hear in that, and you all reflected on it, it kind of goes back to, Rodney's devotion theme of bullies.
Yeah.
Because I would imagine, one way, people can get to know each other, not maybe they were showing up as bullies to each other before, but, because I know, like Carol, you support a lot of volunteers who may, not know each other, may not know people from the community. Is that, do you see that happen? People at True Living Well getting to know each other and building a...
All the time. I'll walk up on a group of folks who are working together, and I think they've come together, and they say, no, we just met here in the garden. And putting your hands in the soil and working at something meaningful does that to people. Food brings a commonality among all of us, and it's a good place to start talking and fellowshipping and building community.
So you really see people, around True Living Well, building community.
Every day.
Yeah. And so if and I know you do a lot of the outreach work, and so if folks are watching and want to get more involved in kind of what the Food Well Alliance does and plug into that, how can they do that? How can folks get more involved in y'all's work?
So you can get involved in a couple of different ways. One way is by volunteering. As Bill touched on, we've been working with community gardens for about 25 years, and at Food Well Alliance, we've been able to inherit and absorb that wonderful program from the Atlanta Community Food Bank and continue it. So we are still doing volunteer days with community gardens. They are small groups. We're definitely practicing physical distancing and all the CDC guidelines, things of that nature. Of course, you can donate to the movement as well. Food Well Alliance is one organization that is supporting many other organizations, hundreds of other organizations, and we need your support in that work. And then you can follow us as well via social media at Food Well Alliance. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm sure we have a YouTube channel as well. And you can find all of this information and more at foodwellalliance.org, which is our website. And that will lead you to all of the different outlets that you can get in contact with Food Well and join us.
All right, great, thank you. Anything you want to, build on from that comment of how people can get involved? Or?
Well, I think what is so important and so impressive is how food and growing food engages young people. I mean, a lot of kids think food comes from Walmart down the street. So actually kids understanding planting a seed and watching it grow and then harvesting the crop, sharing it with our neighbors in need, in the long run, that's our work. It's really about empowering, young people and the community to feel its own sense of power, that it can feed itself.
So in that theme of empowerment and also around and the theme of social justice, right? So, you take someone like me, right, looks like me, how do you think, working with True Living Well or the Food Well Alliance, how can it kind of help, address these core issues that our country has been struggling with? Well, back to the devotion, you heard the story about the sinner, but what are some ways you think you're addressing that through your work? Carol and Jay, I'd love to kind of hear your own personal reflections about how we're leaning into that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I touched on it a little bit earlier. When we think about the history of our country, agriculture is definitely one of the building blocks of it. We also know that the history of it has not been pretty at times, and a lot of it has been built on a lot of bloodshed. So when we think of the communities of the Westside, the metro Atlanta area as a whole, you're looking at a strong Black population, African American, immigrant, et cetera. You also have other people of color, indigenous cultures, et cetera. So when it comes to agriculture, this is the type of work that we've been doing for centuries, for generations over and over. So it's kind of a coming back to the work. There are several people, I did not grow up on a farm, so I don't have that history of growing up on a farm and milking the cows and things of that nature. But as Carol touched on, food is a connector for all of us. We all have to eat, as I say. So it's really important to continue to support the people who've been doing this work. Right. People just like Bill Bolling has been doing this work for decades, as well as people like Carol, Rashid Nuri, Tanisio Sianima, Dara Cooper, Jamila Norman, et cetera, et cetera. There are many people in the community who are doing the work of teaching communities, growing food, and really reaching back into their ancestral heritage. So one of the best ways I think that you can support this movement of social justice, things of that nature, is to continue to invest in food organizations,
Right.
local food organizations. Again, there's something to be said about getting a tomato directly from 5 miles away versus hundreds of miles away. The
Right.
nutritional content's going to be there. So continue to support not only Food Well Alliance, but other organizations, Truly Living Well, et cetera. Look into those organizations and you'll see who's doing that work and who's been doing
Right.
that work. So that's a great
That
way.
tomato tastes better too, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
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 Well, and it reflected, because, Rashi and I had a, number of conversations about social justice, but kind of your own reflections on that, how people can kind of address social justice through, supporting your work with Truly Living Well, or?
So definitely, as Baiyewu mentioned, just supporting through donations, getting involved in the program is very important. But the other thing that I found during this period of time with people who are coming on the farm and volunteering with us is that we're taking a minute to stop, to talk, to listen to each other and get to know each other in a safe environment. And you're able to do that on a farm, in a community garden. And so I just encourage all of us to continue open dialogue, do it in a safe place, and look at ways that we can work together. And that a good place to start is with community gardens and with your urban farms.
Yeah, and actually, you're about to set up our next pre-recorded video, because one thing, in kind of my own journey of getting to know other people, especially those that don't, look like me or share my experiences, is by doing something together is a great way to build trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is, working together on a shared project like a community garden or a farm and volunteering and, and through that work building trust and getting to know each other, right? And sharing experiences.
And I just want to add to recognize that our local growers are essential workers as well.
Right.
We can't grow all of the food for everyone in the city, but we grow a good portion of the food that can feed our immediate communities. So that kind of support for the work we do has a very far-reaching effect. And those of us who are growing in the community, living in community, are putting dollars back in that community.
Yeah.
And so we continue to support that whole economic cycle of.
Yeah, so there's all kinds of multiplier effects for money going back in the community, the pride of the community getting healthier. And that's going to tee up, we're going to look at a pre-recorded video that our Westside correspondent did, Benjamin Early. I think y'all have supported historic Westside Gardens, right, Bill, the Food Alliance. And back to kind of an entrepreneurial local grower, Rosario Hernandez, who's out there growing food and gardens around the West Side. So we're going to cut to about a 5-minute video of learning about the great work of historic Westside Gardens and come back to our panel.
Okay, this is Benjamin Early with Westside Future Fund, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Miss Rosario Hernandez. Miss Hernandez, thank you so much for joining me. I wanted to jump right into the first question I have for you, which is for you to just talk a bit about your role with Historic Westside Gardens and just what the journey has been getting up to this point.
Well, my name is Rosario Hernandez and I live in English Avenue. My position right now in Historic Westside Gardens is that of Executive Director. So I lead the programming, but also sort of still boots on the ground trying to get these gardens put into place along with my staff. All of the folks that are working with Historic Westside Gardens right now are from the community or have close ties to the community so that they know what's going on. They have a feel for what's going on and know the people. And I found out about Historic Westside Gardens and Gil Frank, who was the prior executive director, and kind of like said, what if we did this, put gardens in people's homes? And that's what they really wanted, because community gardens, you still have to leave your house and you still have to go somewhere else. So it came back to these neighborhoods have a legacy of growing food, going back to the way things used to be. So that whole vision was really embraced by the community. And we started with a little bit here and there, let's do one garden. Now we got 2, now we got 10, now we have 17. And right now we have around 130 families that benefit from gardens either in their homes, but if they live in apartments, we have 4 community garden hubs where they can go to.
So what we'll probably do is juice them. I won't
Nutrition and health is the key. So our vision is healthy food, thriving community. We don't want to survive anymore. We want to thrive. We want to turn this around. Our mission is to enhance the wellness of the Westside through home food gardens, health advocates, and also economic empowerment. And it's just a sense of fulfillment that I grew this, I sold it, and someone is benefiting from it. We help a lot of seniors because they remember the way it used to be, how everybody grew food and they shared with their neighbors. And so they don't have the health or the ability to do as much. So when the coaches go out there, we help them weed, we listen to their conversations, and it's kind of like they look forward to that social interaction. COVID has driven people crazy, but historic Westside Gardens did not stop 1 minute. That's when we said, wait a minute, folks want to know where their food is coming from. Now you get your little box of food at the porch, and that's fine. You don't know how many times it's been handled, but when you're growing it, you know who handled it. You did. You grew it. You know what you're eating.
So how can everyday people, members of the community who want to support Historic Westside Gardens get involved?
There are 3 ways. One way is volunteering. We could always use volunteers. We follow safe practices. We'll have hand washing stations, sanitizer. We have masks. We sanitize our tools. So volunteering is a lot because it's work. It's work. Getting the word out, as far as what we do, because that's how resources come back to us. So, I have to applaud Historic Westside Gardens for thinking about this and saying, you know what, they know what they need. Let them handle it from now on. So my position is, as executive director now, is continuing to fundraise, continuing to bring in resources, and surrounding myself with a team that has the same passion that I do.
All right. Ms. Rosario Hernandez, thank you so much for your time. I'm looking forward to volunteering and shopping at the market.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Absolutely. Thank you, Benjamin.
All right. Thank you, Rosario. And I know from, working with her, she brings a lot of heart and passion and advocacy to her work. And as you learned on the video, not only is it, growing great food for people in the community, it's giving people work in the community. And one of the things we want to do at the Westside Future Fund to really lift that up is we're bringing online multi-families that have space to grow food, working right with Historic Westside Gardens, to grow food right on site and grow more of it. But one thing I've learned, being around these folks, one part of the food is growing the food, but then where do you go to, process the food and then distribute the food? And we're very lucky to receive some foundational support, especially from the James and Cox Foundation, to purchase a building when it was sold by the organization Bill founded, 970 Jefferson Street, in partnership with the Foodwell Alliance. We bought at the end of December to really serve as a food hub. And I think we want to kind of talk more about the vision for 970 Jefferson Street with Bill. Are we going to cut back that live camera so we can talk a little bit about 970 Jefferson Street and the role it's going to play in supporting urban farming and local growing? All right, I'm trying to make sure I'm turning around the right way. Well, there we are. So Bill, talk a little bit about, because we're looking now inside 970 Jefferson Street, how this building will be used now to support local growing, local farming, processing food. Tell viewers what they can expect to see in the future.
Well, this really is home. I've been here since 1984. What we have here is a 60,000 square foot facility with loading docks. You can see through the video we've got walk-in coolers, walk-in freezers, places to store food. We've got a co-op working out of here right now, Urban Recipe. We've got the farmers markets working out of here and the MARTA market working out of here. So you always think, how do you use the asset that we have? The asset is this has been here. It's trusted. People know this place. We've also, over the last couple of years, listened to the community, and it told us that food was a primary interest. I love that video with Rosario talking about the social interaction, right? But we've got a place where we can do a farmer's market, we can do a maker's market, We can have a place for farmers to come in and process their food. We've got coolers and freezers that we can use for the farmers. So it really is taking what used to be back in the 60s an old beer warehouse, right?
Right.
Into a food bank, and now making it an urban ag community center.
Yeah.
And it really, we have a lot of ideas and plans here, but we're still listening to the community.
Right.
What does the community need?
What does the community want? And I know a foundational thing for you has always been, really using that space as a way to build community by doing, right?
Exactly.
And so now the new doing is still around food, but and I know when COVID hit, we weren't quite sure if we could, activate this facility. We kind of put a pause on things, but then, some of y'all's comments, COVID really put a point on, wow, now really is the time we need to put this building in service. And you went out and really listened to the community with the Foodwell Alliance, and such a need for not-for-profits and entrepreneurs and others around food. So maybe, mention again some of the not-for-profits. I know Foodwell will be there that you'll see kind of supporting our urban growers.
Well, we have about 14,000 square feet of office space where the food bank has been. So we're going to have groups like Georgia Organics and Wholesome Wave. Carol's looking for an office over there. She doesn't have one.
So she might have an office? All right, yay.
We're going to share it with Westside Future Fund. But we're really going to have the synergy of 5 or 6 different urban ag groups, our partner agencies that we support, and really trust that process of the synergy that comes out of working together. And then we're actually going to use the warehouse as a distribution center and a community meeting center.
Yeah.
It's incredible. We're right on the belt line.
Right.
We're in the neighborhood. We have the assets that we can use for the neighborhood. And it's going to be a great meeting place, I think.
Yeah, no, and I think it's important. And we saw in the first video live feed from Benjamin, we distribute our food from there, but it's really important to underscore that others do too, right? That's a big facility. We want to, share the assets so, others can use that same space to deliver food, process food, but it's all about, really leveraging that asset on behalf of, the historic West Side.
That's what a servant leadership organization does.
Right.
It listens. It engages the community. We're going to use it for community purposes. We're going to learn from it and empower the community in that process.
And I know, Joe, you especially have been out there listening to the community about how, what do you think people are excited about to use that building in service of local growers and urban growing? Like, what do you see coming out of that?
I think so far community is excited to be able to come to a centralized location and interact with a variety of organizations that are doing different types of work when it comes to urban agriculture. So being able to go to kind of a one-stop shop and, sit down perhaps with Carol Hunter from Truly Living Well, sit down with Foodwell Alliance, check in and see what's going on with Fresh Market Market and community farmers markets, Wholesome Wave, who serves the entire state of Georgia. Just being able to come to a place and learn more about these different organizations, as well as to learn how to become involved with these organizations in a centralized location. So that's one of the things that people are really excited about. And they also want to see growing spaces. They want to see what are we going to do to beautify the space? What are we going to do with the trail? What kind of demonstration sites will they see with the growing techniques and styles? So we're really excited to kind of liven up the area with some fresh produce and fresh fruit trees and things of that nature.
So it'll really be leveraged, on behalf of our, local growers. And one of the things we're going to talk more about in a second, but the 970 Jefferson Street, just kind of as luck would have it, happens to be immediately adjacent to the new Westside Beltline Connector Trail. And for viewers that are watching, I think most folks know about the Atlanta Beltline, which is the circle around the city. But the Westside Connector Trail will actually connect kind of the downtown path trail, the bike path trail, to the Beltline itself a little further west of the building. So that Westside Connector Trail will be bike and footpath.
And it'll also tie all the way into Silver Comet.
All the way to the Silver Comet Trail. And so, Bill, I know you and I have, walked around a bit, but one of the things, I grew up on the east side, and I never would have imagined all the people moving in to be near the East Side Beltline Trail, because and you walk along the East Side Beltline Trail, and lots of people are out there hanging out. Now it's often thought of as beachfront property, and I remember one of our philanthropic investors, when you think about legacy, entrepreneurs from the old Fourth Ward, well, how many could really afford to be in something like Ponce City Market, which has great foot traffic, right? That's what you want. Well, probably not any, or very few. But because of philanthropic support, we can ensure that entrepreneurs, because we anticipate a lot of foot traffic around 970 Jefferson, around the belt line, to be able to really bring out the local growers, and hopefully when we get through COVID, a lot of folks interacting right there in the belt line, right?
And something we've talked about, John, is it's also going to be a place, because we're expecting a lot of people on the Beltline to tell the Westside story, right, of our history, both history in food, but history of leadership. It's been a very vital community, and it's coming back. Another thing I'm really mindful of, because we've had a lot of different kind of markets. We used to have a program called Food Oasis that we supported. And Carol will tell you the same thing, is that when people come together, right, start talking about food, all of a sudden somebody brings a guitar, the kids start showing up, and all of a sudden you have community. And that's really what we picture. The food bank has been enlivened by our next purpose for this facility. And I think it's going to both build community, it's going to help us to connect each other, and we're going to learn a lot about food, nutrition, health, the environment. We'll get better educational outcomes. I mean, it really ties into all the things that we think are important on the West Side.
And we're excited, and we have a lot of gratitude to the PATH not-for-profit. We're about to cut to another pre-recorded interview with now the executive director of PATH, Greta, that Benjamin did to learn more about that Westside Connector Trail. But all of the investment in that Westside Connector Trail that they're building out is being raised philanthropically. I have to confess, as a Vine City resident, I've already actually been out it. You can jog and bike on it. And what's going to really amaze people is you'll be able to, from the new Cook Park over in Vine City, get on that Beltline Trail, go across bridges, all the way through English Avenue, under Donnelly Howell, and go right in front of 970. And just like that East Side Trail, people are like, holy cow, they didn't realize that connectivity. I think that's exactly what's going to happen. And so we're gonna cut to that pre-recorded video with Greta, so folks can learn more about that Westside Connector Trail, right next to 970 Jefferson Street.
Excellent.
All right, Greta, so thank you for joining me. First off, I want to congratulate PATH Foundation on celebrating 300 miles worth of trails in Georgia. That is a significant accomplishment. So tell us, how has COVID-19 had an impact on PATH, if any impact?
Oh, good question. Well, we all know that this year has been an interesting year that no one anticipated. We started our capital campaign in 2019, so when COVID hit, we were right on halfway through our 3-year campaign. And so our fundraising is the area that was impacted. We did make a decision as a nonprofit to push pause on our fundraising. But the great part was that our project stayed on schedule. We were able to continue construction. We're standing here on one of our projects, Westside Beltline Connector. And so during COVID, this project's been able to employ people and keep people going in construction. And we're excited at the end of this year to have the construction finished here. We're also starting to come back online with our fundraising, and so I really think as an organization we have not been as impacted as others.
So Greta, every PATH trail has its own unique features that people look forward to. What do you anticipate folks looking forward to most about the Westside Trail?
So the trail that we're currently working on here on the west side, we've named the Westside Beltline Connector. It actually brings the Beltline into downtown, and so that is a true destination feature, to have a connection between the Atlanta Beltline and all of PATH's trails downtown Atlanta. But even when you step out from that, this trail is going to have a regional connectivity that takes the city of Atlanta all the way to the Silver Comet Trail, all the way into Alabama. And so with this project regionally, we really tie a lot of communities into Atlanta, a lot of people that are wanting to go further distances on a trail.
Greta, tell us, In your experience, what other types of developments tend to correlate with walking, riding trails, and how do those developments complement one another?
You know, everywhere that we build trails, we're creating just a beautiful, inviting experience for pedestrians and bicyclists. And so that really does draw in every type of development, connecting residential. Most people would love to be along a trail, to be able to have the ease to recreate, to be able to come to work on a trail, to be able to go to the grocery store on the trail. So it really is endless, the opportunities along the trail that can come after we've created a linear park. I would say please follow us on all of our social media, go to our website. We annually have a fundraising campaign where you can donate. If you are enjoying Path Trails, then we would love for you to be a Path supporter.
All right, thank you, Greta, and Path, if you're watching. And again, great job, Benjamin. And so for those that may have a question, in just a couple of minutes, we're going to cut to your opportunity to ask questions via our social media feed. So if you have questions, get ready to type them in so we can ask those questions of any of our panelists. But we're going to cut back to really show you, where that Path Westside Connector Trail is relative to the 970 Jefferson Street. So we're going to go back to Benjamin, who is live, folks. This is really happening. This is all live, so hopefully it'll work now that I've teed that up. All right, you're back out there, Benjamin. And Bill, if you can see it, do you want to kind of tell viewers what they're looking at? And you can,
Sure.
You can even say anything to Benjamin you would like to.
Where are you, Benjamin?
So I'm in the parking lot at 970 Jefferson Street. If you just look just behind me, this back fence, just on the other side of this back fence is the Westside Connector.
And you're looking at Joseph Lowry Boulevard, right in front of you.
Yes, sir, Joseph Lowry. Absolutely. So the Westside Connector cuts right across Joseph Lowry. They've literally just finished pouring the concrete recently. It's nice and smooth. It's got that nice black tone to it going across the street. And just outside the fence, the other day when I was out here with Greta, we actually saw a few people on the trail, so that was good to see it in use. But I'll let you talk a little bit more about the vision for it, Bill.
Well, since we've been there all these years, we had trains running up and down those tracks. And I can tell you, 30 years ago, I used to dream of, wow, what if these trains went away? And we had this for ourselves, and that's what we have today. The belt line literally goes on the south side of the building. So the building's going to open up. There's 5 different openings to the belt line. Our parking lot, where we're likely to do farmers markets and makers markets.
Yeah, that big parking lot. Imagine all that.
Benjamin is standing right now.
Yeah, it'd be great to activate.
It's going to be easy to get to. It's near a MARTA station. On the path, folks will be walking and riding their bikes. They can stop by and maybe get a cup of coffee and a snack, can learn something about the West Side, and can certainly learn about food and local agriculture.
And I know one thing that's really important for folks to appreciate is, kind of the good news, bad news of the Beltline is, investment really follows, which can drive up, does drive up land costs. But thanks to philanthropic support with the 970 Jefferson Street, that y'all's plans working with the not-for-profits is to only charge them kind of operating costs, right?
All we have to do is cover the light bill and security and so forth.
That's pretty special, because that means a lot of not-for-profits that, hey, might love to be on, some of the real estate in front of the East Side Trail, some of the rents over there are not quite affordable, right? That's a big deal.
Well, it's huge, and we can thank the food bank for allowing us to purchase it. What they were going to do was tear it down and build high-end
because they sold it to us
condos.
Below, because you reminded me, but they had actually an offer from a housing developer for about, a couple million more than we ended up paying for.
More than we paid for it. So we have to thank the food bank and James Dallas, who chaired the board then, and Kyle Wade, that we continue to use an asset of the community. Right. And we keep pivoting and listening to the community and making it work for the time that we live in.
Yeah, and I appreciate y'all's coming in, because I know back to when the Westside Future Fund, we actually, knowing this was going to be announced, bought up some land to preserve for affordability for housing. But we also know there's always a concern the community is, especially on the west side, is it going to be activated for people that look like me, right? Like more like, or people that look like, that was when we were doing early housing, it's like, who's really going to be using this? But I think one of the things that y'all are really intentional about is making sure west side growers, west side entrepreneurs, but really activating that building kind of.
Well, I really think about the West Side Trail should reflect the West Side and the people that live in it. East Side might look like something different. So I would say this facility is a place where the community will tell us how it wants to serve.
Well, with that tee up, do we have our special professional broadcast person, Craig Lucy, back? Do we have some questions?
We do. So people are watching right now on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We have more than 70 comments. They're definitely 70.
Oh,
so
wow.
They are loving this panel.
Does that count as a trending?
Yeah, we're going to go an extra hour today?
Yeah, we might with you guys.
We're going to break the internet.
We are going to break the internet. So I'm going to walk behind y'all real quick, and if we could, flip the switch here, and we're going to pull up social media and show you what's going on Facebook here. So here, Douglas Dewberry is saying, awesome headquarters. And it's refreshing. That's okay. It happens. But I'm going to pull up questions right here on my phone. And one of the first ones that we have, again, we're just people chiming in and saying how much they like the show. But we have Susan Desmond, who's been watching and just wanted to add this. Want a double snap on local fresh fruit and veggies. Georgia Fresh for Less applications are open for next year. And she tagged Wholesome Wave, Georgia.
Wholesome Wave.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Yeah. And so Cicely Garrett chimed in, how can people get involved and support historic Westside Gardens? But Rosario actually answered that during her piece, and so she acknowledged that. Then if we keep going, Urban Fresh Community Gardens, they're watching right now on YouTube, and they just said 10 plus years of serving the West Side. So thank you to them as well. Let's jump to Mo Hemi as we continue to look at our live feed right here. Mo Hemi asks, will the city of Atlanta have a part in the food hub? So maybe, Bill, you can chime in on that one.
Well, you know, one of the really exciting developments in the city of Atlanta is that we actually have an urban ag office, really one of the only cities in the country. So we have a very close relationship with the city of Atlanta. One of the things, and JLU, you might speak to it, one of the things we went to the city with is, could farms and gardeners get cheaper water, not have to pay residential rate because they have different meters? The city responded to that. We've worked with the city on empty lots and trying to green those up. That's another part of the vision of the West Side, is that we feel like the West Side can be the green, sustainable, resilient side of this city. You know, we've still got land, we've got folks who love food, we've got models like Truly Living Well, we've got folks that like JLU and his team that are going to support folks, you know, who want to help feed their neighbors in need, who want a sense of empowerment. So it's been a great relationship with the city.
You want to build on that?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I mean, for a long time, another organization that has existed is the Southwest Atlanta Growers Cooperative. It is an organization that is Black identified farmers and community gardeners representing initially Southwest Atlanta, but as well as Northwest Atlanta, and has expanded past that. There was a time we would say that Southwest Atlanta, Northwest Atlanta was the largest concentration of urban agriculturalists in the Atlanta metro area. And I still believe to this day that's true. So there's a lot of work going on in the West Side, Southwest Atlanta, Northwest Atlanta, and there's definitely been partnerships with City of Atlanta government with the water meters and other technical assistance and support. So yeah, it's a great relationship.
So I think we have one more question, Craig?
Yeah, we do. Right now, everybody's watching this live again, and we're going to pull this right up. Most Valuable Kids of Greater Atlanta, a big supporter. They've been watching our virtual summit since the start, and they ask, will there be programming for youth to get involved with all of this urban agriculture? Who would like to take that one?
Absolutely. You might talk about it at your particular place, and JLO, you can talk about it, how we've supported that throughout the region.
Well, already there are a number of ways that children can get involved. We have a summer program for kids. We also have a children's garden that is located on our site, and we are working with the Atlanta Botanical Gardens to do a backpack experience during this time of COVID, where children can actually come with their family, put on a backpack, and then experience the garden that way. And we're also now talking with a number of homeschoolers who want to be outside about using our children's garden as a space to come in and actually host classes. So please connect with us. We'd love to talk more about how we can support the youth in our community.
And with Food Well Alliance, we've worked for 5 years now with Truly Living Well on one of the largest urban agriculture experiences in the metro Atlanta area, known as Soil Festival. We were not able to do it in person this year because of the pandemic, but we'll see what we can do next year. That is a great event where children are able to come out. There's a petting zoo. They're able to get their hands in the soil. I would say that the organizations that we support with community gardens and urban farms, especially the gardens, a lot of them actually have children who participate in the growing of the food and the harvesting of the food, things of that nature. We do have volunteer activities. I believe the youngest age, though, is 16, that you're eligible to be a volunteer and actually work with Food Well Alliance in that way, just for liability's sake. But I will say that when it comes to just food spaces in general, you know, food is not an age-determined thing. Everybody is eating. It involves the whole family. It involves the whole community. So it's not uncommon to see children at a garden, sometimes at a farm, and just walking around on a Path Foundation or something like that.
You know, it really reminds me of a story of where we've had summer youth programs, internships, graduation, and parents come up and say, the kids have now demanded in my home that we're eating fresh food. The children will lead us, and we really believe that.
The children will lead us. That's a great thing, and I know, you know, we're getting, you know, to kind of a wrap-up time. I know, you know, and y'all have been great, but I also want to real quick and make sure each of y'all have a kind of a final reflection as you reflect on our conversation today, reflect on our broadcast. But you have a kind of, and Bill, I'll come to you last. But a final point you really want, you know, make sure viewers, you know, anything on your heart. But we want to kind of take that final, and again, lots more to talk about. And people can, you know, re-engage with y'all following the broadcast. But you know, Carol, any kind of, you know, and again, thank you for being here. But final reflections you want folks to really know and understand.
Just to know that we're blessed to live in this environment in Atlanta. We can grow food all year long. And so let's work together to take advantage of that fact. You can connect with us at trulylivingwell.com for classes and things of that nature. But we're blessed in this community, and I want us to fully take advantage of this opportunity to grow food for our own self-sufficiency, but also to be a blessing to our neighbors.
trulylivingwell.com, and you've been a blessing, and I'm kind of your neighbor, and I can say y'all been a blessing for me because y'all are so good to work with. You're so easy to work with in terms of your partnership. You do a great partnership with the M. Angus Jones Principal. I know you've been working great at the Atlanta Botanical Garden, so many others. So Carol, thank you for your heart and your commitment.
Thank you.
Jay, any reflections for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that, you know, this work of food is work that is, again, centuries old. It's not new, though we're very excited there. A lot of people are new to this work and becoming more aware of it. You know, I would say that the future of this is going to be led by equity and justice. And we should reach back into our history and pay attention to the kind of ancestral and indigenous practices of agriculture. That's really going to save the environment. That's going to build stronger and more resilient communities. And again, acknowledging the people who've been doing this work for decades and decades, and also welcoming the new people who are coming into this work. I like how when we talk about kind of housing and things of that nature, we talk about legacy residents, things of that nature, always keeping that in mind, always remembering the BIPOC communities, the Black, Indigenous, people of color communities that have been working in agriculture, but recognizing again that it is inclusive for all. But equity and justice is what's going to lead the way for this movement.
So equity and justice, you know, I love that because we have as our vision statement, how do we build a community Dr. King would be proud to call home, reflecting where he last lived. But as I reflect on our broadcast, you know, said another way, could we have equity and justice without supporting our indigenous urban growers? You know, my answer was, I don't think so. Like, no. It's kind of a must-have. If we're really after authentic equity and justice, it's kind of a must-have, right? Because we're honoring them. It's back to health and wellness. I mean, there's so many other things. So it's kind of a must-have, and our collective vision to build a new Westside future is exactly what you said. So equity and justice, how important urban growing is to all that. And so thank you. That was a great reflection. You know, Bill?
And really is the core to our work, right? We've talked a lot today about food, nutrition, health, environment. We've talked a lot about facilities, and I would say again, the 970 facility it's a co-creation. It's whatever we make it. But I would say at the end of the day, we're in the people business, right? It's the elders who often know how to grow food. It's kids who are so excited about it. It's the children that'll lead us into a better future. But it's so important for our children to know our heritage, to know who's grown the food through the years, to know the importance of soil. So I couldn't be more excited, you know, in a facility I've been in for 35 years, to bring new life to it, to have new partnerships with the Westside Future Fund, and to invite the investors, the volunteers, the gardeners, the farmers together. We will create the community that Dr. King would be proud to live in.
Well, thank you. You've been marching those shoes a long time, Bill, so thank you. Thank you for all the support you've given the Westside Future Fund and me personally. So, and I appreciate all y'all being here today. Just a moment, we'll let you exit. But as we kind of shift to the next part of the final part of our broadcast, you know, I always say when we're at the gatherings, but reminding people our collective effort to deliver economic mobility, because I think Dr. King would be proud to know that if we were delivering economic mobility for those indigenous residents, that would be a great thing. And as we work on that kind of a community, we know it has 4 key impact areas that best practice says you really need to deliver on, you know, all at once. You know, public safety, community safety, health and wellness, right, cradle to career education, and mixed income communities. And y'all really hit, you know, at least 3 of those, you know, with all the work you do. So thank you. And what we're going to cut to now is part of the community work as the neighborhoods have depopulated on the west side, but there's still a lot of indigenous folks left. You know, they're often, you know, hardworking but low wage, often reflect, people may say, quote, low income. I think it's better to say low wage, but just because they're low wage doesn't mean they're low worth. And so one of the things we really have leaned into at the Westside Future Fund with a lot of great support from a lot of different Atlanta corporations and others is our Home on the West Side program. We're specifically geared to ensure that residents from the community can have high quality, affordable rental, as well as, you know, prioritizing people moving into the community through our Home on the West Side. People have connections to the community. So if you're from the community, work in the community, graduate from Booker T. Washington, graduate from the UC schools, those are all in our community retention guidelines through Home on the West Side. And we're going to hear kind of an update, you know, from one of the great folks on our team, you know, Jaron, talking about, you know, some new multifamilies we're bringing online soon through Home on the West Side. And so thank you again for y'all for your live broadcast this morning.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, this is Jaron of the Westside Future Fund here with Ben to give you folks an update on Home on the West Side, and specifically the projects that we have currently underway and that are coming soon. So Ben and I are here at one of the units in 507 English Avenue, which is a 6-unit property that we were awarded from Invest Atlanta. And we expect these to be complete by the middle of October. All 6 of these units will be covered by Atlanta Housing Home Flex vouchers designated for families earning no more than 50% of area median income, which currently is a household income of approximately $35,000 per year. So once this is complete, close behind it, we expect 395 James P. Brawley to be complete by the end of October, and that's another 31 units, 20 of which will be covered by the same Atlanta Housing Home Flex vouchers. Looking a little bit farther into the future, we have another 37 units across 6 properties in English Avenue that will start construction over the next couple months, and most of those will also be covered by Atlanta Home Flex vouchers. And so by the end of this year, we'll have complete or under construction nearly 80 total multifamily units. One of those new projects is 588 592 Paynes Avenue, again in English Avenue, and this property was also granted to the Westside Future Fund by Invest Atlanta. It's 2 buildings, 12 units total, and it'll be a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. 8 of these units will be covered by those same Atlanta Home Flex vouchers, so very thankful to Atlanta Housing for their continued support. In addition to this next phase of projects will include another 5 buildings, Again, all in English Avenue and primarily supported by Atlanta Housing. Like our projects at 507 English Avenue and 395 James B. Raleigh, we decided to preserve the existing buildings to showcase the value and character of these neighborhoods, which is in alignment with the Westside Land Use Framework Plan. Lastly, in addition to our multifamily renovations, the Westside Future Fund has also started development on our first single-family homes, such as this one at 895 Neal, which we're doing in partnership with the Atlanta Habitat for Humanity. These opportunities will be available through Home on the Westside and our partnership with On the Rise Financial Center. So for more information, please go to westsidefuturefund.org and navigate to our Home on the Westside program.
All right, great job, Jaron. Thank you. And that was done earlier this week. And for those watching the broadcast, Jaron and his wife are recently brought into the world a new baby boy. So congratulations on that. And as you can tell, continue to serve as he supports his wife and his new young son. And so now we're going to cut live to Benjamin to kind of introduce our next video. Benjamin, you still out there? We hope so. All right.
Can you hear me, John?
Now I can hear you,
I'm
yes.
Still here. So I just picked up some fresh jalapenos from one of our other urban farmers, so I'm looking forward to eating these.
All right. What'd you pick up for me?
So well, we'll talk about that later.
All right.
But so you just heard the side from Westside Future Fund's perspective. Now it's time to hear from the impact perspective. What type of impact the Home on the Westside program is actually having on the Westside and people of the Westside. So I sat down with Miss Kiana Capers. She's the most recent move-in at the 1300 over on Mason Turner. Check out the pre-record I did with her. It's really moving.
This is Benjamin Early with Westside Future Fund, and I'm joined today by Miss Kiana Capers. She is one of the most recent move-ins here at the 1300. Kiana, how you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Doing all right, all right. Tell us, what has your living situation been like on the Westside up to now?
Well, before I moved here, I lived not too far from here, like by Anderson Park, and I had been living there for about 2 years, and the reason I was there is because it was affordable. So, of course, I'm a single parent, so I just had to be somewhere that I could afford. But you know how they say, you get what you pay for. So me being able to afford it didn't necessarily mean that it was a nice place to stay. So I was subjected to a lot of crime, violence, drugs, and I just felt like I had no other choice. Like that was the only thing, the only place that I could go for them because it was affordable.
So Kiana, tell us, what was the feeling you remember having when you first passed by what is now the 1300?
Well, of course, living in the city, I would drive up and down past these homes all the time, and they looked so nice, and I was always telling myself, oh, I know those are expensive. I wish I could stay there, you know. And I never would have thought that I would be able to live here.
So talk a little bit about how being able to afford the rent here at the 1300 impacts the rest of your financial life.
Yeah, it's very helpful that the rent's affordable because it gives me a chance to do other things, like buy things that I need, like for the baby, diapers and household stuff, and even save, because one day my goal will be to own a home.
And finally, Kiana, what do you love most about the Westside?
I love the culture of the Westside, and I love that, well, my parents and my grandparents grew up on the Westside. My grandma and my mother, and my grandfather, they went to Clark Atlanta University, and it's a lot of history here as far as Martin Luther King, and it's a lot of histories, and it's just where I grew up. So it's just something that I'm in love with and that I'm used to with family and friends. So that's what I love about the West Side.
Well, I'm happy that you can afford to stay here a little bit longer. Thank you so much.
All right.
All right, great job. Thank you for that. And thank you to our partnership with the City of Refuge to bring online 1300 Mason Turner. And we'll be bringing to you more folks coming through our Home on the West Side program in the weeks ahead. We're real excited about it. But we want to come back to our Home Depot winner. So we do have a winner randomly selected, Gwendolyn Weddington. You know, congratulations. You're the winner of our Home Depot gift card. So our staff will be getting that to you. So thank you very much. And for those of you that have been watching our live broadcast or maybe watching it later via pre-tape, thank you for watching this. And in a final reflection, for those of you that watched in the very beginning, you know, Rodney talked about, you know, bullies, kind of mentioning bullies. And as I was reflecting that through the broadcast, I'm reminded that, you know, back in 1960, you know, that the historic neighborhoods the West Side Future Fund is focused had 50,000 residents, but for the wrong reasons, bullying reasons, right? Jim Crow and segregation. So it's 50,000 residents, overwhelmingly African American, mixed income because of that. The low wage live with the high wage. But we're in a new day, and we want to rebuild the West Side, you know, drawing on its people, its history, and its cultures, and have a new West Side future. But a lot of the things that we're doing, especially as we look to lift up those of high worth but maybe of low wage, is high quality affordable housing through our Home on the West Side program. You heard some of the other not-for-profits. So we need philanthropic support to help build this new West Side future around equity and justice and economic mobility. So we'd ask you to invest in our new West Side future. You can go to our webpage, and certainly any of these other organizations you heard about today would be great to invest in too. So please help us by coming together with time and treasure and help us build this new West Side future. And thank you for watching our broadcast today, and thank you to all our panelists for being with us.